I think it's going. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, today I am wearing a bicycle helmet. Dun dun dun. Not really a story behind this. It's just a bicycle helmet, you know, like you wear when you're on a bicycle. My head is so big, this thing is like real snug. Okay, good. All right, so let's get to today's agenda. We're in week 10, day number 2. So, in life skills, it's still even worse. In life skills, we're talking about grit. Enough said. We'll get to that when we get to it. In current events, we are talking about a historic space dock. Really, I guess more accurately, it's a historic space docking. But anyway, we'll talk about that when we get there again. In history, as promised yesterday, we are discussing why riots are a little surprising these days. And then we are going down here to literature. We're reading chapter 33 in the book. In science, we don't have any science. Let's see here. And in math, we're going over scientific notation, day number 2. So let's go ahead and get to it. Is that? All right, good. We're going. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, as you can tell, I've been busy doing paperwork literally all day for the past 10 hours, and so I have not had a chance to clean my desk area today. So it's still kind of a mess in my little office. Anyway, I wanted to talk briefly about grit. So there's this thing called grit, right? And grit, when you're talking about like dirt, grit is like a very rough dirt substance. And it is used to increase friction in different mixes, like when you're mixing concrete or asphalt or something like that. But the kind of grit that I want to talk to you about, I'm going to clip this. It feels weird with it dangling. I see myself. There you go. That's even more awkward, but whatever. Grit that I wanted to speak about today is the ability to not quit. And so people who have grit are people who get knocked down and they get back up again. It's really easy to say that grit is important, but to actually live it, to actually understand it, to internalize it, and to gain that ability of grit is something else. Some of you, I already know, have it. From the time I've spent with you and the stories you've told me from your life at home and previous experiences and other places, I already know that you have a high degree of grit. Some of you may have it, and I just don't know. But grit is important because anything that is important in life is difficult. If something in life is not difficult in any way, shape, or form, it's probably not that important and it's not that worth doing. There are people in my life who don't have any career and they spend most of their time playing video games and watching TV. And playing video games and watching TV and working a part-time job doing retail or something like that, it's all very easy. And they do it because it's easy, and they live a very minimal life with very small victories and very small losses. If you want to live a big life, if you want to do something important with your life or something meaningful with your life, you have to take risks. And when you get knocked down, you have to get back up again. And you should also know that when you get knocked down, if you are getting knocked down in the pursuit of something important to you, that is probably an indication that that important thing that you are trying to do is important enough to get back up. What do I mean by that? A lot of you are going to face challenges again in high school. There's going to be times in high school where things don't go your way. You're betrayed by friends. You have problems at home. You have a teacher who is terrible. These things will happen to you. And at those moments, you will feel like maybe it's easier to give up. The easy way out is usually not the way out that leads to life achievement and life fulfillment. Again, the easy way out is not the way that leads to fulfillment and achievement in your life. Graduating high school is an important thing to do. Therefore, it will be more difficult than other things you've already done in the past. Creating a career for yourself, developing good habits for yourself, keeping that GPA high, being a decent and good human being. These are things that are hard to do, and life will knock you down. But again, have grit. Have this ability to get back up again, because the meaningful and important things in life, again, are seldom easy. Pretty much always, they're difficult. And if you can get back up, and if you can keep trying, you will get them eventually. All right, that's it for life skills. So for current events, again, we're kind of addressing some of the less positive aspects of what's going on in the world in our other subjects. And so in current events, I would like to talk about this historic docking. So the other day we talked about the historic launch, where for the first time in human history, a rocket that was created and maintained by a company, not a government, but a company, a rocket maintained by a company was launched into outer space with 2 human beings aboard, and it successfully achieved low Earth orbit. And so today, we're talking about the docking. And so what is the big deal about this capsule that we're seeing in the video right there? What's the big deal about this capsule being able to meet up with the International Space Station in low Earth orbit, connect, and safely dock? Why is that so important? Well, kids, to put it into perspective, the International Space Station is going at a tremendously fast rate in its orbit around the world. And so the idea that this Dragon capsule could not only launch and return successfully when it's, again, not being maintained by a government, but being maintained by a company, is incredible on the face of it. But the idea that it would be able to dock with the International Space Station, oh, there it goes. You can see it right there. It's about to connect. I'll just watch this really quick. Wow, there it goes. There is so much science and math that has to go into just these two sides connecting correctly. Because remember, these things are floating out in space. They're not being pulled in with a rope. There's no force of gravity that's acting upon them in any meaningful way to bring them together. It's all about trajectories and math and being slow and gentle. Like when you watch Star Wars or Star Trek and people just kind of like open the gate, you know, and and they fly in, right? And it's all really fast and easy. That's not the way it works in real life. In real life, you have to very gently come together. Guys, it's like trying to hit a bullet in the air with another bullet while blindfolded and riding a horse, okay? That's how difficult it is to get the trajectory of the International Space Station to line up with the trajectory of the Dragon capsule and then have them softly meet, and then after they softly meet, have them connect and be able to open up the doors to each of them and so people can get on and off. It's very, very difficult, and it was one of the main tricks that the Apollo missions invented, whereas this idea that you can have a lander and then a capsule and the modules can meet up repeatedly in space, because it's so hard. It's not easy. And so it was historic that SpaceX was not only able to launch this rocket, but then was able to catch it up to the International Space Station and dock it properly. Last little tidbit, if you ever go into outer space, and some of you might think that this is just a throwaway line. Oh, there you go. You can see it docked with the arm, with the docking arm on the International Space Station. But it is 100% within the well. I need some water. But anyway, it is 100% within the realm of reality that if becoming an astronaut or a scientist that works in space is something that you are interested in, and you ever actually go into outer space, something that is interesting that you can expect is that you're going to wait on the launch pad for many hours. So you get inside the top of the rocket in the crew compartment, and you're sitting there for literally hours waiting for your launch window to get set. And then once your launch window's there, if your mission doesn't get scrubbed or canceled because of weather, then when you launch and you're actually going from the point where you're on the Earth and you're breaking through the atmosphere, that whole process of going through all of that that crazy G-force as it's pulling you backwards, all of that's usually 8 or 9 minutes long. It's only 8 or 9 minutes. And then for these specific astronauts, let's see here, Chris Cassidy was the one waiting on the space station. What were the names of the guys? I don't remember the names of the two astronauts. I need to look it back up again. But anyway, the two astronauts in the capsule, they actually were waiting once they got into low Earth orbit. After 9 minutes of crazy like G-forces and being propelled into the air, they then had to wait 18 hours while their capsule caught up to the International Space Station and then decelerated to the point where they could connect safely. Because again, if it catches up to the International Space Station and it's going too fast, it's going to slam into it and it's going to crash and they're going to die. And so they have to do it in a very, very controlled way. So again, there's tons of math and it is an extreme process. And the fact that this is all happening at this point in time is wonderful and historic, and it makes the chances of you being able to fly in space one day that much higher. So anyway, that's it for today. I'm not going to talk any more about this because, as you can imagine, you can see all the diagrams and stuff. This is literally a 4-hour video of them connecting to the International Space Station, opening the door, and then getting out and high-fiving. 4 hours, so we're not going to spend all that time. But anyway, it's important to discuss. It's kind of a cool current event thing. Yesterday, since you don't have to do reading anymore, for literature, we are going to finish this book by me reading it to you, so that way you don't have to do anything. Just listen. No biggie. So, chapter 33 of The Adventures of Tom Sawyer, The Fate of Injun Joe. Huck and Tom compare notes. An expedition to the cave. Protection against ghosts. An awful snug place. A reception at the Widow Douglas's. Within a few minutes the news had spread, and a dozen skiff-loads of men were on their way to McDougal's cave, and the ferry boat, well filled with passengers, soon followed. Tom Sawyer was in the skiff that bore Judge Thatcher. And so, kids, a skiff is like a small boat, or you can even like kind of imagine sometimes a skiff might be like a raft or something like that. And so remember, at the end of the chapter yesterday, Tom Sawyer revealed that he and Becky were trapped in the cave, or they were trying to get out of the cave, but Evil Joe or Injun Joe was also in that cave. And so when he revealed the fact that Joe was in the cave and they just shut the cave up, everybody's going there to catch the murderer. All right. When the cave door was unlocked, a sorrowful sight presented itself in the dim twilight of the place. Injun Joe lay stretched upon the ground, dead, with his face close to the crack of the door, as if his longing eyes had been fixed to the latest moment upon the light and the cheer of the free world outside. Tom was touched, for he knew by his own experience how this wretch had suffered. His pity was moved, but nevertheless he felt an abounding sense of relief and security now, which revealed to him, in a degree which he had not fully appreciated before, how vast a weight of dread had been lying upon him since the day he lifted his voice against this bloody-minded outcast. So that's a fancy way of saying he was relieved that he was dead. Okay? Injun Joe's bowie knife lay close by, its blade broken in two. The great foundation beam of the door had been chipped and hacked through with tedious labor. Useless labor, too, it was, for the native rock formed a sill outside, and upon that stubborn material the knife had wrought no effect. The only damage done to the knife was done to the knife itself. But if there had been no stony obstruction there, the labor would have been useless still. For if the beam had been wholly cut away, Injun Joe could not have squeezed his body under the door, and he knew it. So he had only hacked that place in order to be doing something, in order to pass the weary time. in order to employ his tortured faculties. Ordinarily, one could find half a dozen bits of candle stuck around in the crevices of this vestibule, left there by tourists, but there were none now. The prisoner had searched them out and eaten them. He had also contrived to catch a few bats, and these also he had eaten, leaving only their claws. The poor unfortunate had starved to death. In one place near at hand, a stalagmite had been slowly growing up from the ground for ages, builded up by the water drip from the stalactite overhead. The captive had broken off the stalagmite, and upon the stump he had placed a stone wherein he had scooped a shallow hollow to catch the precious drop that fell once in every 3 minutes in the dreary regularity of a clock tick, a dessert spoon once in every 24 hours. So guys, what he was doing, if you aren't being able to follow along, is there's a stalactite on top and it's dripping one drip every 3 minutes. And so he put a little scooped rock on the bottom to collect the drip, so he would have a spoonful of water once every day. That drop was falling when the pyramids were new, when Troy fell, when the foundations of Rome were laid, when Christ was crucified, and when the conqueror created the British Empire, when Columbus sailed, and when the massacre at Lexington was news. It is falling now. It will still be falling when all these things have sunk down the afternoon of history and the twilight of tradition, and been swallowed up in the thick night of oblivion. Has everything a purpose and a mission? Did this drop fall patiently during 5,000 years to be ready for this flitting human insect's needs? And has it another important object to accomplish 10,000 years to come? So in other words, he's just asking, this little drip that's been happening from the cave has been happening for literally thousands of years. Is the purpose of this drip for all those thousands of years to give Evil Joe just one last drink of water? 10,000 years from now, will it have some other purpose? Right? No matter. It is many and many a year since the hapless half-breed scooped out the stone to catch the priceless drops, but to this day the tourist stares longest at that pathetic stone and that slow dropping water when he comes to see the wonders of McDougall's cave. Injun Joe's cup stands first in the list of the cavern's marvels. Even Aladdin's palace cannot rival it. So in other words, in years to come, that little cup that he made that was like his dying cup is still a tourist attraction. Injun Joe was buried near the mouth of the cave, and people flocked there in boats and wagons from the towns and from all the farms and hamlets for 7 miles around. They brought their children and all sorts of provisions, and confessed that they had had almost as satisfactory a time at the funeral as they could have had at the hanging. So, in other words, they enjoyed going to his funeral. Back then, they didn't have the internet or television, so this is what they did. This funeral stopped the further growth of one thing, the petition to the governor for Injun Joe's pardon. The petition had been largely signed, many tearful and eloquent meetings had been held, and a committee of sappy women been appointed to go in deep mourning and wail around the governor, and implore him to be a merciful ass and trample his duty underfoot. You can tell how the author feels about pardoning people who are murderers, right? Injun Joe was believed to have killed 5 citizens of the village. But what of that? If he had been Satan himself, there would have been plenty of weaklings ready to scribble their names to a pardon petition and drop a tear on it from their permanently impaired and leaky waterworks. So in other words, he's calling them crybabies, and like Injun Joe deserved to die, right? The morning after the funeral, Tom took Huck to a private place to have an important talk. Huck had learned all about Tom's adventure from the Welshman and the widow Douglas by this time, but Tom said he reckoned there was one thing that he had not told him. That thing was what he wanted to know about, what he wanted to talk about. Huck's face saddened, and he said, "I know what it is. You got into number 2 and never found anything but whiskey. Nobody told me it was you, but I just knowed it must have been you Soon as I heard about that whiskey business, I knowed you hadn't gotten the money because you'd have got at me some way or other and told me, even if you was a mum to everyone else. So, in other words, Huck is sad because there was no money. Tom found the hiding spot and all he found was alcohol. Tom, something's always told me that we'd never get hold of that swag. Why, Huck, I never told on that tavern keeper. You know his tavern was all right the Saturday I went to the picnic. Don't you remember you was to watch there that night? Oh, yes. Why, it seems about a year ago. It was that very night that I followed Injun Joe into the Witters. You followed him? Yes, but you keep mum. I reckon Injun Joe's left friends behind him, and I don't want him souring on me and doing me mean tricks. If I hadn't been for me, he'd been down in Texas now, all right. So, in other words, if it wasn't for Huck following Injun Joe or Evil Joe, he figured that he would have already escaped to Texas. But because he followed him, he was able to prevent the killing of the widow and eventually his death in the cave, right? Then Huck told his entire adventure in confidence to Tom, who had only heard of the Welshman's part of it before. Well, said Huck presently, coming back to the main question, whoever nipped the whiskey in number 2 nipped the money too, I reckon. Anyways, it's a goner to us, Tom. Huck, that money wasn't even in number 2. What? Huck searched his comrade's face keenly. Tom, have you got on the track of that money again? Huck, it's in the cave. Huck's eyes blazed. Say it again, Tom. The money's in the cave. Tom, honest Injun. Now, is it fun or earnest? Like, is he joking? Is he kidding around? Is he funning? So, earnest, Huck. Just as earnest as I ever was in my life. Will you go in there with me and help me get it out? I bet I will. I will if it's where we can blaze our way to it and not get lost. Huck, we can do that without the least little bit of trouble in the world. Good as wheat. What makes you think the money's? Huck, you just wait till we get in there. If we don't find it, I'll agree to give you my drum and everything I've got in the world. I will by jingo. All right, it's a whiz. When do you say? Right now, if you say it. Are you strong enough? Is it far in the cave? I've been on my pins a little 3 or 4 days now, but I can't walk more than a mile, Tom. At least I don't think I could. It's about 5 miles into there, the way anybody but me would go. Huck, but there's a mighty shortcut that they don't anybody but me know about. Huck, I'll take you right to it in a skiff. I'll float the skiff down there, and I'll put it back again all by myself. You need never turn your head over. Let's start right off, Tom. All right, but we want some bread and meat and pipes and a little bag or two and 2 or 3 kite strings and some of these newfangled things that they call Lucifer Matches. I tell you, many's the time I wished I had some of those when I was in there before. What's a Lucifer Match? Let's see. Lucifer Matches. The friction match was invented in 1830. Lucifer means light bearer and is Greek for phosphorus, with which the matches were tipped. Oh, so it's like a match that you and I are familiar with, the match where you use friction to start it. No, so it's a phosphorus match. Okay. A trifle afternoon, the boys borrowed a small skiff from a citizen who was absent and got under way at once. So borrowed a skiff from a citizen who was absent is another way of saying they stole it, right? When they were several miles below Cave Hollow, Tom said, now you see this bluff here looks all alike all the way down from the cave hollow. No houses, no wood yards, bushes alike, all alike. But do you see that white place up yonder where there's been a landslide? Well, that's one of my marks. Well, get ashore now. They landed. Now, Huck, where we're a-standing, you could touch that hole I got out of with a fishing pole. See if you can find it. Huck searched all the place about and found nothing. Tom proudly marched into a thick clump of sumac bushes and said, Here you are. Look at it, Huck. It's the snuggest hole in this country. You just keep mum about it. All along I've been wanting to be a robber, but I knew I got to have a thing like this, and where to run across it was the bother. We've got it now, and we'll keep it quiet. Only we'll let Joe Harper and Ben Rogers in, because of course there's got to be a gang, or else there wouldn't be any style about it. Tom Sawyer's Gang. It sounds splendid, don't it, Huck? Don't it, Huck? Well, it just does, Tom. Who and who'll we rob? Most anybody. Waylay people, that's mostly the way. And kill them? No, not always. Hive them in the cave till they raise a ransom. So hold them prisoner in the cave, right? What's a ransom? Money. You make them raise all they can offer and their friends. And after you've kept them in a year, if it ain't raised, then you kill them. That's the general way. Only you don't kill the women. You shut up the women, but you don't kill them. They're always beautiful and rich and awfully scared. You take their watches and things, but you always take your hat off and talk polite. They ain't anybody as polite as robbers. You'll see that in any book. Well, the women get to loving you, and after they've been in the cave a week or 2 weeks, they stop crying, and after that you couldn't get them to leave. If you drove them out, they'd turn right around and come back. It's so in all the books. Wow, that is so sexist. Oh my gosh. Why, it's real bully, Tom. And bully is like a good thing. Like, bully on you, yay, right? Wow, it's real bully, Tom. I believe it's better to be a pirate. Yes, it's better in some ways because it's close to home and circuses and all that. By this time, everything was ready and the boys entered the hole, Tom in the lead. They toiled their way to the farther end of the tunnel, then made their spliced kite strings fast and moved on. So they were using the kite strings to work as guides for them, right? A few steps brought them to the spring, and Tom felt the shudder quiver all through him. He showed Huck the fragment of candle wick perched on a lump of clay against the wall and described how he and Becky had watched the flame struggle and expire. The boys began to quiet down to whispers now, for the stillness and gloom of the place oppressed their spirits. They went on and presently entered and followed Tom's other corridor until they reached the jumping-off place. The candles revealed the fact that it was not really a precipice, but only a steep clay hill 20 or 30 feet high. So they got to a place where it wasn't just like a cliff, it was more like a hill that was 20 or 30 feet up, right? Tom whispered, "Now I'll show you something, Huck." He held his candle aloft and said, "Look as far around the corner as you can. Do you see that? There, on the big rock over yonder, done with candle smoke. Tom, it's a cross." "Now where's your number 2? "Under the cross, hey? Right yonder's where I saw Injun Joe poke up his candle, Huck." Huck stared at the mystic sign a while, and then said with a shaky voice, "Tom, let's get out of here." "What, and leave that treasure?" "Yes, leave it. Injun Joe's ghost is round about there, certain." "Nah, it ain't, Huck, nah, it ain't. It wouldn't, it would haunt the place where he died, away at the mouth of the cave, 5 miles from here." "No, Tom, it wouldn't. It would hang around the money. I know the ways of ghosts, and so do you." Tom began to fear that Huck was right. Misgivings gathered in his mind, but presently an idea occurred to him. "Looky here, Huck. What fools we're making of ourselves. Injun Joe's ghost ain't gonna come around where there's a cross." That point was well taken. It had its effect. "Tom, I didn't think of it, but that is so. It's lucky for us, that cross is. I reckon we'll climb down there and have a hunt for that box." Tom went first, cutting rude steps in the clay hill as he descended. Huck followed. 4 avenues opened out of the small cavern in which the great rock stood. The boys examined 3 of them with no result. They found a small recess in the one nearest the base of the rock, with a pallet of blankets spread down on it. Also an old suspender, some bacon rind, and the well-gnawed bones of 2 or 3 fowls, so bird bones like chicken. But there was no money box. The lads searched and researched the place, but in vain. Tom said, Well, he said under the cross. He said under the cross. Well, this comes nearest to being under the cross. It can't be under the rock itself because that's set solid in the ground. They searched everywhere once more, and then sat down discouraged. Huck could suggest nothing. By and by Tom said, "Looky here, Huck. Here's footprints and some candle grease on the clay about one side of this rock, but not on the other sides. Now what's that for? I bet you the money is under the rock. I'm going to dig in the clay." "That ain't a bad notion, Tom," Huck said with animation. Tom's real Barlow was out at once, and he had not dug 4 inches before he struck wood. "Hey, Huck, you hear that?" Huck began to dig and scratch now. Some boards were soon uncovered and removed. They had concealed a natural chasm which led under the rock. Tom got into this and held his candle as far under the rock as he could, but he said he could not see to the end of the rift. He proposed to explore. He stooped and passed under. The narrow way descended gradually. He followed its winding course, first to the right, then to the left, Huck at his heels. Tom turned a short curve by and by and explained, "So kids, they dug under the rock and they found a path under there, like a tunnel." "My goodness, Huck, looky here!" It was the treasure box, sure enough, occupying a snug little cavern along with an empty powder keg, a couple of guns in leather cases, 2 or 3 pairs of old moccasins, a leather belt, and some other rubbish well soaked with the water drip. "Got it at last," said Huck, plowing among the tarnished coins with his hands. "My, but we're rich, Tom." "Huck, I always reckoned we'd get it. It's just too good to believe, but we have got it, sure. Say, let's not fool around here. Let's snake it out. Let me see if I can lift the box." It weighed about 50 pounds. Tom could lift it after an awkward fashion, but could not carry it conveniently. "I thought so," he said. "They carried it like it was heavy. That day they at the haunted house. I noticed that. I reckon I was right to think of fetching the little bags along." The money was soon in the bags, and the boys took it up to the cross rock. "Now let's fetch the guns and things," said Huck. "No, Huck, leave them there. They're just the tricks to have when we go a-robbing. We'll keep them there all the time, and we'll hold all our orgies there, too." Oh, God. It's an awful snug place for orgies. "What's an orgy?" "I don't know, but robbers always have orgies. And, of course, we've got to have them, too. Come along, Huck. This is a classical book, kids. It's not me. Come on, Huck. We've been here a long time. It's getting late, I reckon. I'm hungry, too. We'll eat and smoke when we get to the skiff." They presently emerged into the clump of sumac bushes, looked warily out, found the coast clear, and were soon lunching and smoking in the skiff. As the sun dipped towards the horizon, they pushed out and got under way. Tom skimmed up the shore through the long twilight, chatting cheerily with Huck, and landed shortly after dark. "Now, Huck," said Tom, "we'll hide the money in the loft of the widow's woodshed, and I'll come up in the morning, and we'll count it and divide it. And then we'll hunt up a place out in the woods for it where it'll be safe. Just you lay quiet here and watch the stuff till I hook Ben Taylor's little wagon. I won't be gone a minute." He disappeared and presently returned with the wagon, put the 2 small sacks in it, threw some old rags on top of them, and started off, dragging his cargo behind him. When the boys reached the Welshman's house, they stopped to rest. Just as they were about to move on, the Welshman stepped out and said, "Hello, who's that?" I can't do a Welsh accent. "Huck and Tom Sawyer." "Good. Come along with me, boys. You are keeping everybody waiting. Here, hurry up. Trot ahead. I'll haul the wagon for you. Why, it's not as light as it might be. Got bricks in it? Or old metal?" "Old metal," said Tom. "I judge so. The boys in this town will take more trouble and fool away more time hunting up 6 bits worth of iron to sell to the foundry than they would to make twice the money at regular work. But that's human nature. Hurry along, hurry along." He has no idea it's gold. It's way more expensive than iron. The boys wanted to know what the hurry was all about. "Never mind, you'll see, when we get over to the Widow Douglas's." Huck said with some apprehension, for he was long used to being falsely accused. Mr. Jones, we haven't been doing nothing. The Welshman laughed. Well, I don't know, Huck, my boy. I don't know about that. Ain't you and the widow good friends? Well, yes. Well, she's been good friends to me, anyways. All right then. What do you want to be What do you want to be afraid for? This question was not entirely answered in Huck's slow mind before he found himself pushed, along with Tom, into Mrs. Douglas's drawing room. Mr. Jones left the wagon near the door and followed. The place was grandly lighted, and everybody that was of any consequence in the village was there. The Thatchers were there, the Harpers, the Rogerses, Aunt Polly, Sid, Mary, the minister, the editor, and a great many more, and all dressed in their best. The widow received the boys as heartily as anyone could well receive two such looking beings. They were covered with clay and candle grease. Aunt Polly blushed crimson with humiliation and frowned and shook her head at Tom. Nobody suffered half as much as the two boys did, however. Mr. Jones said, Tom wasn't at home yet, so I gave him up, but I stumbled on him and Huck right at my door, and so I just brought them along in a hurry. And you did just right, said the widow. Come with me, boys. She took them to a bedchamber and said, Now wash and dress yourselves. Here are 2 new suits of clothes, shirts, socks, everything complete. They're Huck's, no? No, thanks. Huck, Mr. Jones bought one and I the other, but they'll fit both of you. Get into them. We'll wait. Come down when you are slicked up enough. Then she left. End of the chapter. So, did the boys keep the money? What are they there for? We'll find out tomorrow. Hope you enjoyed that, guys, and I hope you weren't insulted by my terrible accents or everything else. Okay. All right. Let's go ahead and do some math. Okay. Are we recording? I think so. All right, ladies and gentlemen, now for the meat and potatoes of today's lesson. We are discussing scientific notation. Scientific notation. All right, so scientific notation is for real big numbers, real big, or real small. That's what they're used for, because in science we get numbers that are just outrageously huge and outrageously tiny. And so the form for scientific notation is we always have a single digit, a decimal place, and then the other non-zero digits times 10 to the something power. Just like that. And that is the basic form of scientific notation. So we discussed this on day 5 of week 9, and so let's go ahead and let's talk about how to turn a number from scientific notation back into standard form. So we have this figure here, 1.09 times 10 to the 6th power. Do you see that right there? I'm looking at number 5 right there. Yeah? So I'm trying to make use of the full screen for us here today. Okay, and so in order to do this, the way that we calculate this, or the way that we figure this, is we go 1.09, and then see this 6 right here? That's the number of times that we have to bump the decimal back. So we bump it back 6 times. Once, twice, 3 times, 4 times, 5 times, 6 times. So the decimal gets put right back here, which means that this equals a 9 with 1, 2, 3, 4 zeros behind it. 1, 2, 3, 4 zeros, like that. So, oh wait, there's a 1 up there. I forgot about that. Like that. There we go. So, wow, that's super sloppy. I'm sorry. So this 1.09 times 10 to the 6th power equals 1,090,000. Okay? All right, let's try another one. So let's do number 9 beneath it, that 8.521. Okay, so we have 8.52 times 10 to the negative 3rd. Now, when we're undoing a negative, instead of the number going this way when we bump it, the decimal goes the other way, that way. And so let's go ahead and take this so we can bump it. 8.52. Okay? And so we're going to bump it 3 spaces, but we're bumping it the opposite direction because it's negative. There we go. 1, 2, 3, like that. Okay? And so that gives us 0.00852, just like that. So do you see how when I put the decimal there, I still added another 0 next to the decimal? That's extra. That's like bonus. You actually don't technically need that to be correct, but I always add a 0 there just for my own noggin, because if I don't, it's going to feel like something's missing. It's kind of like, I don't know, it's like, yeah, it feels like there's something that should be there that isn't. Okay, and so you can do that if you want, or you cannot do that if you want. It's up to you. But anyway, so that means that, again, 8.52 times 10 to the negative third equals 0.00852. Just like that. Oh, come on. That silly iCloud notification keeps popping up. iCloud! All right, let's go ahead and turn a couple of these into scientific notation. So if you look at number 13 down there, it's 93 million, it looks like, right? Yeah, 93 million. So we have 93 million, just like that. So if we want to turn this number into scientific notation, first, we have to find the first non-zero digit, which is the 9, and then we smack a decimal right behind it. Boom, just like that. All right? So we get 9.3. Then we have to count the spaces between this decimal we just added and the original decimal. So the original decimal was an understood decimal right there, you see? And so we have to count all of the bumps. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So we had to bump it 7 times. So we get the 9.3, and remember, don't forget, this is 7, times 10 to the 7th power. And so 9.3 times 10 to the 7th power, therefore, equals 93 million. And so that's how we turn it into scientific notation when we are using normal standard form. All right, let's do another. Okay, it looks like that number 17 down there looks interesting. Okay. All right, so number 17, we have 0. Was that 3 zeros? 0, 0, 0, 4, 5, or 4, 3, 5. All right, so we do the exact same process. So we find the first non-zero digit, and in this case, it's going to be the 4. And then we smack the decimal right behind it. Boom. 4, and then we get 0.35. All right? So that comes down here and gives us 4.35. Now we count the bumps between the original decimal, which is right there, and our new decimal right there that we just added. And so let's count the bumps. But again, this time we're going backwards. Okay, the number is becoming bigger rather than smaller, so it's going to be negative bumps. So we have a -1 bump, a -2 bumps, a -3 bumps, a -4 bumps. So this is -4 because we went like backwards 4 spaces, more or less. So we get 4.35 times 10 to the -4th power. There we go. Got it? All right, we'll do just a couple more to show you how that goes. Let's see what we got here. Okay, let's do these last 4 together, and we are good today on scientific notation. Yip, yip, hooray! I said yip, yip. I'm watching Avatar with my kids right now. We're binge watching the cartoon, and he always goes yip, yip. I think that's why I'm doing that. So we have 2.345 times 10 to the 8th power. Okay, and so we have to turn this into standard form now. And so, excuse me, so we have the decimal there, and so we have to bump it 8 times now. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. I have to add some zeros. 0, 0, 0, 0. And let's rewrite that to make it cleaner. So we have 3 zeros, 0, 0, 0. So that's the first 3 there. Okay, and then 0, 0, 5. Cool, got that. And then we have 4, 3, 2. All right, so what we get is 234,500,000 equals 2.345 times 10 to the 8th power. Good. All right, got that one done. So that was number 6 there. Let's take a look at, what is that, 7? Yeah? Okay, we have 7.021 times 10 to the negative 5th. I miss working with you guys because usually I'm up at the board writing these and you guys are reading it to me. I like it better that way. Okay, so we have 7.021, just like that. And we're bumping it 5 times, but it's a negative 5, so we're bumping it the other direction, don't forget. So we bump it once, twice, 3 times, 4 times, 5 times. Then we add our zeros. Super sweet. Okay, and then we rewrite it because Mr. Roll has a weird thing about that where he has to rewrite it so it looks pretty. And then it doesn't even turn out to be that pretty. Oh, and then he forgets a 1. Okay, there we go. And so we see, and again I have to add a 0 right there because I'm OCD. So 0.0007021 equals 7.021 times 10. Whoops. Come on, man. 10 to the negative 5th. There we go. That is that. All right. Are you getting the hang of it yet? I hope you are. Hope you're at home and you're not just like sitting there with your mind all a blank being like, oh, what's going on? Maybe you're not even looking at the screen right now and you're not paying attention because this is less interesting than what's on TikTok on your phone. Okay, anyway, we have 900 million and we're going to turn it into scientific notation. And so this one's a little different because, okay, I find the first non-zero digit, and that's the 9 right there. That's my first non-zero digit. So I smack the decimal behind it right there. And so that, oddly enough, just turns into 9. Okay? We don't have to put 9.0. You can put 9.0 if you want. It doesn't really change anything, but it's just 9. And now, again, we have to take the original decimal and we have to count the bumps. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Boom. 9 times 10 to the 8th power, and we're done. And so 9 times 10 to the 8th equals 900 million. 900 million. Wouldn't it be great to have $900 million? That would be cool. It would not be cool to have 900 million like cats or something like that. That would not be cool. Anyway, let's keep on going. 0.00837. I wonder if there are 900 million cats in the world. Like, probably. I mean, there's 7 billion humans. I don't know, though. All right, that's for Googling another day. Okay, so let's turn this into scientific notation. We have the weird decimal problem. So we find the first non-zero digit, which is the 8. We smack the decimal behind it. Yay, boom, right there. We count the bumps, and so we're bumping in reverse, -1, 2, and 3. So we get 8.367 times 10. And again, we're bumping in reverse to the -3rd. Yeah, there we go. That's time. Okay. So I hope that you're beginning to, again, pardon me, get the hang of this kind of stuff. Now, if you're like, I don't get it, Mr. Roll, this is not useful in any way, shape, or form, let's start talking about bigger units. And you probably maybe have heard me say this before, but let's talk about astronomical units. Yeah, astronomical units, or AUs. So, an astronomical unit, all right, is right here. Boom, boom, boom. So an astronomical unit is the difference, or is the distance between the Earth and the Sun. It's the average distance, because I don't know if you kids knew this, but the orbit around the Sun is not, it's not a perfect circle. We go around in an oval shape, and so it's kind of like the average distance for us. And so it is 1,496 million kilometers. So that's 149, that's million, okay. million kilometers. Okay, is that million? Yeah. So sometimes we do just 150 million. Okay, that works. 150 million kilometers. Cool beans. All right. Now let's figure out how many AUs other things are. How many AUs for, let's say, Saturn? I want to say it's 10 AUs. 9 AUs. That was really close. Okay, so let's talk about that for a second. Let's talk about the AUs for Saturn. So 150,000 kilometers equals 1 AU, or astronomical unit. Okay, and so that's exciting. That's fun, right? But what happens if we're calculating another planet that's not the Earth? And so what if you're calculating Saturn? And you're like, well, how many kilometers is Saturn away from the sun? And so Saturn is 9 AUs. So we have to take 9 AUs times 150 million kilometers. And if we were to do the normal math on this, we might be here a while, okay? So we have to take 150 like this. Lots of zeros, times 9. Lots more zeros. Okay, we have 40. Boom. Wait, what am I doing? No, it's 45. Ah, I'm messing up. Okay, yeah, 9 times 5 is 45. Okay, 9 times 1 and then 13. There we go. All right, and so we end up with 1,350,000,000 kilometers. Okay, and so that's the distance between Saturn and the sun. But if we had scientific notation, and let's say that we do, all right, and so this is kind of the work that we have here. So let's take scientific notation. And so in scientific notation, 1 AU is 1.5 times 10. Oh, come on. 10 to the 3, 6, 7, 8 times 10 to the 8th. So let's do that same problem with scientific notation. So Saturn equals 9 AU times 1.5 times 10 to the 8th, just like that. So we're multiplying this time, but we're doing so with astronomical units. And so now we just have 9 times 1.5. So 1.5, 9, 4, 9, 13. Cool. We get that times 10 to the 8th. And if we're going to do scientific notation, we have to bump this over 1, so we get 1.35. Now, if we're bumping this over 1 right there, we have to increase the exponent right there. Oops. Like that. That's our answer. So, what it does, again, when we're using scientific notation, is it turns this block of work into this block right here. So it's a lot less confusing, right? It's a lot smaller. There is less work. There are less zeros. And really, in terms of science, like Saturn is not that many kilometers away, from the sun at least. And so Saturn is kind of like a smaller number. In science, we get some just ridiculously big numbers and ridiculously small numbers because, we'll measure things in like meters or I don't know, whatever. But anyway, that's how scientific notation is useful. It helps us do tasks faster. Tomorrow, we're going to go over how to multiply and divide numbers using scientific notation. Actually, tomorrow we're just talking about multiplying and yeah, that's right. We're just talking about multiplying tomorrow because we just did a multiplication problem where one number was standard and the second number was in scientific notation. But tomorrow we're going to learn how to do two numbers using scientific notation. So that's it. Anyway, folks, that's it for Group 1 and Group 2 Math. I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day. Take care, everybody.